Ericsson obviously was, let's put it this way, it was the name for phones many years ago, right? I think it's been slightly superseded, but it's still an enormous brand, and it's in various parts of the whole kind of mobile picture. What have you been doing as an organisation yourself around net zero and reducing your carbon footprints?
Yeah, so I mean, when we work with this, we start with ourselves. So we have, in fact, set one of the first companies to set science-based targets ourselves on a 1.5-degree trajectory. So in fact, in the last 5 years, we have reduced our carbon emissions with over 70%. So direct impact from ourselves is going down. So that is, I think, one of the things that you always can do, even small or big. You can sort of look on yourself and how can we reduce our impact. The concept of doing it on the value chain and understanding sort of what is upstream, what is downstream, scope 3, and so on, that's much more complicated. So for this reason, we have been working with our customers to simplify for others on how to do it.
One of the big things that we're going to face in the future is a more connected world, but it could be a more divided world. Yeah, it's about half the population don't have access to the internet, right? Yeah. So how do we make sure that as we're doing all this in places like here in Glasgow and Western Europe and parts of India, China, great, but what about sub-Saharan Africa, parts of South America, places where people don't have the access to the technology? What are companies like you looking at in terms of that? Because net zero isn't net zero until we all go net zero.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're absolutely right there. So from Ericsson's side, we have two main sustainability areas and targets and priority areas. And the first one is climate and energy. And the second one is digital inclusion. So how can we secure that we give access to everybody? And the way that we think is that to start, you have to start by some sort of institutional access. So schools, healthcare centers and community centers, where they can also teach people, because we cover already with our technology 95% of the population of the world, but only 50% are online. So the gap is not only coverage. Coverage is part of it. The other part is affordability and skills. So knowledge, how to get the people to understand how to do it and what to do. And one of the things that we have realized is that in many places, like in Sweden, for instance, a lot of elderly people and others, they don't know how to go online. So it's not only in sort of sub-Saharan Africa, it's in Sweden, it's in other places. And then what we have are sort of the municipal libraries, where they have so then you can sort of, a person can go there and get access. And I think that could work also in a sub-Saharan African setting, a community center, a school, where people can go, learn how to go online and get the access. So if we build a sort of a common way of driving institutional coverage, then I think it will then spread to the personal part at a later stage. And I don't think that is sort of a bad thing. I think it's what we are doing in many places. And so it's not sort of inferior for sub-Saharan Africa to do it like that. I think it's a great.
I get what you're saying. I suppose the thing is, though, as we look at it, places like Africa, parts of India, where my family from, parts of the developing world, they're going to skip technologies, right? Yeah. So they're not going to stick in landlines. They're going to skip straight to a mobile phone. Exactly. They're going to have, they're going to have peer-to-peer trading with networks. So how do you enable this all to be done by using less energy? How do you enable this to be done so the products aren't obsolete within 2 years, and then we've got all those raw materials being thrown away, or the rare earth elements that go into it, the silicon, all of that? What are you doing around that, which is your embedded carbon and also the kind of general carbon you're using?
Yeah. So we don't produce phones anymore, so we don't do handsets, and there is a huge difference between networks and handsets. Yeah. So for handsets, the best thing that you can do to decrease your own digital carbon footprint is to use your handset for 1 more year, because the majority is embedded from the production. Yeah. While for a network, the majority is in the use of the network. So we need to make energy efficient networks that don't use fossil fuels to be powered in these places, in rural settings, with diesel and other solutions. So we need to make them solar run or wind run. So we have renewable energy that runs the network also in these places, and then that reduces the carbon footprint of the network significantly. Over 80% of the impact of mobile networks come from the user phase. Only 13% are upstream, and less than 1% is ours. So you have the majority during the energy consumption of running the networks. So in that case, it might be more efficient to modernize the network and have a more energy efficient equipment out there faster than to try to use an old equipment. So you have to, when you do a sort of a circular economy approach, you have to look on the full life cycle and not only focus on sort of reuse, if it's in fact better to...
Understood. I mean, this is the whole thing. We heard earlier just there about 5G and the idea that 5G can, yes, you'll have to build probably, you'll have to build some towers or networks around it, but will it mean that what you're doing more efficiently and you're doing quicker? That's the idea, is it?
It's not only idea, it's the truth. Already when we started setting the standard for 5G, we thought about energy consumption. So the two things, one thing is when you don't use the network, the idle part, so reducing that. So when you don't have traffic, you should have no power usage. And when you have traffic, you should really be efficient and transmit as fast and as much as possible with the high efficiency of the transmission. So those are the two key things. And in 5G, what we did was to reduce the signaling. So in 4G, you signal on all frequency very often. In 5G, we said that let's just select one frequency, so we don't have to listen to all of them, but we can send on one, and we can do it more seldom, because we don't need sort of the first signal to go over in less than 120 milliseconds. Then we can be super fast. So it's really, and then what we also do is this beam forming. So instead of sending radio signals all over the place, we send signals to the place where we need it. And then we reduce all the losses in the network. So we call it rush to sleep. So, send it fast, go to sleep. Send it fast, go to sleep. And I think that is really what 5G is all about and why it's at least 10 times as energy efficient as 4G was.
Is that one of the enablers for our pathway to net zero, do you think?
Yeah. And one of the key enablers is really what 5G does in society for the electricity grid, for transport, for agriculture, for precision forestry, for, all different opportunities that 5G enable in the different sectors. That is where we will save the planet.
Why have you come to COP?
Because I think that people don't understand that we need digitalization faster than we believe. That this is so big part of the solution. And if the politicians focus only on the hard-to-abate sectors, like they have done to a large degree, aluminum, steel, air transport, extremely important, we have to do it, but we have to bend the curve now. Digitalization can help us bend the curve now, and that is what we need to do, so we can sort of buy us time to do the long-term stuff, because we need both.
Our platform was all about, our mantra is better business, better planet, because I'm not going to give up my mobile phone, and denial is not going to work. And why should other, the whole conversation around India and China and Brazil, they're saying, well, you did this for 200 years, we want to bring our people up. Yeah. So we have this. Is there a problem here, which is perception between the public and the reality, which is there's a kind of anti-business side of this argument, this eco-argument we've seen here on the streets in Glasgow, we've seen that. That's hard to wash, because business isn't bad, all bad. This isn't this thing that we're all evil. It's quite hard to fight, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard to fight, but I think that as business we have brought this on ourselves to a large degree, because there are so many that are trying to sort of capitalize. And we talked about it in the panel earlier here at the GSMA event about the fact that companies are sort of over-promising and not genuine about what they're doing. So not following the standards, promising that they will be. So the credibility of the whole net zero gets lost if somebody says, I will be net zero by 2025.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's impossible. So why do you say it? We have to be serious and credible and start reporting. Stop signing up to pledges and promises. Start doing things and report on your progress. That's the only way that we can get a change.